Hello and welcome to NativShark Startup Podcast. This is number 5. I'm your host, Caleb, brought to you with co-host Nico, as always. And additionally, of course, we are coming at you from, sponsored by the NativShark platform, of course, every single time. Go over there and try 7 days, a free trial, and learn some Japanese in a very cohesive, non-stressful way. Yes, your brain will feel so happy because every day you'll start your studies and you'll know exactly what to do. All right, go give it a try. All right, that all aside, let's get into some topics today, sir.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. All right.
So, I have a question for you to start out.
Okay, straight into the questions. Let's go.
What is your morning routine?
It's, it's a good question. So, wait, I feel like we should start with you. What's your morning routine? Because,
Oh, why? Because I'm like the routine guy.
yes, because you're the routine guy. Ask me what my morning routine is. I'm about to think about that. I'm like in the process of building a new morning routine. So,
Yeah, I find that mine evolves a lot too. Um, it's more difficult to keep one consistently because of having a baby.
mhm.
But for the most part, I wake up around 4 or 5, somewhere around there, and I start working. And I work until like 7:38, and then 8:30. And I should mention that working from around 4 to 5 is work that I sort of do without any distractions. I don't When I say work, I don't sit down at the computer and check my messages in
Mm,
Discord or my email. I sit down and start creating something that needs to be created, checking something that needs to be checked, fixing something that needs to be fixed. To the best of my ability, I try to do the highest value work that I can do during those first few hours of the day
mm,
before all the other distractions and things start to wheedle their way into my attention. And then, yeah, around 8:30, I'll take my son to his grandma's so she can babysit him.
mm.
Then I will. And sometimes we have meetings, like on Fridays and Wednesdays, we have meetings
Wednesdays, yep.
before this. So the work cuts a little shorter on those days. And then we have meetings before I take the baby. After I drop him off, I go to the gym, exercise, shower, go to a cafe, and work for a couple hours at a cafe, which is my favorite. Then I go home. If we're going to have an afternoon or like midday meeting, that'll happen then. If we're not going to do that, I'll just do more content work usually.
Mm,
And I try to call it a day by like 1 or 2, because that's like 9 to 10 hours of from when I started. Sometimes it doesn't work out quite like that, and I end up working till 4 or 5. But I try not to do that because I don't want to burn out. And that is my routine. And once we have some higher level content for Japanese on NativShark and other languages, I'm gonna have to start fitting in my studies also into that routine. So I kind of have the luxury of not studying right now because I want to learn a bunch of languages, but I'm not going to until we're teaching them on NativShark.
right.
Maybe I can just stream them or something. Then it counts as work and studying.
There you go. That'd be fun. So you, I mean, I kind of already know the question, but answer the question. But so you feel like you're most productive, in the morning. You like the morning hours.
Yeah,
Is what
I
was what
think
you're
all of
saying.
us. I think all of us are most productive at a time when we are not allowing anything else to get our attention. So
Hmm.
I'm working at home, and
Right.
from in those hours before I take the baby, Ray is not working because she's watching the baby once he wakes up.
Right.
If she were working, she's sitting next to me and we talk to each other about the content because we have to. Or, if I hear lots of noises or if I'm talking to people in Discord or anything that takes my attention away from the task at hand, it's going to be less productive. So it doesn't have to be in the morning. it's just I find that it's easiest to do in the morning.
Hmm. Yeah. My morning routine.
You hear people a lot be like, I'm the most productive early in the morning or late at night or something. But how often
Yeah.
have you heard someone say, I'm most productive at 2 p.m., right? It's
Yeah, because people are most
because
distracted at 2 p.m. typically.
yeah, because the world has your attention.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's maybe like productive versus not productive. It might be most related to how much the world is essentially distracting you, right? And if you can find that low distraction time in the morning, then that's probably why you feel most productive in the morning. And then same thing at like night if you can get, you know, that time at the night. For me, I want to say like historically, I've always felt like I could get that low distraction time the best at night, and many times I would run schedules where I would start work at like 9 p.m. and then be done at whatever 9 hours after that is. Uh, quick
Yeah,
maths.
I've seen you do that
Yeah, you've
a
seen
few
me. You've
times.
seen me do that a few
Yeah.
times. Like one of the like a long like years ago now. One of the times when you were living in Asia still, and I was living in um, the U.S. I ran a backwards schedule, and we were like on the same time zone. I did that for like 2 months one
I
time.
think I was in Thailand then, maybe.
I want to say you were,
I
yeah,
don't remember.
yeah. Maybe the most recent time you lived in Chiang Mai, possibly
Yeah, so like 2017,
17.
I think.
Before you
Yeah,
lived in
Oregon.
or well, was it Oregon or was it
I was in
Arizona?
Arizona for a little while before Oregon.
But yeah, right. I feel like you went
Yeah,
from
it was
Chiang Mai to Arizona. I
Chiang Mai
think.
to Arizona to
Yeah.
Oregon, but we
Okay.
were only in Arizona for like 4 months, so I don't really count it. But I guess I should.
Yeah. So I think it was that time. So 2017, because that would have been just after I moved out to Washington. So yeah. Um, but lately, I've been doing things on the morning instead. Like by lately, I mean like within the past year, I've been skewed. Like I don't work like the middle of the night anymore. I've been working in the mornings. But by most recently, within the past couple of weeks, um, I've been kind of shifting things around and getting it so that I start work between 4 and 5 in the morning. Um, and then I first thing I do is the opposite of what you do, and I actually do check my messages immediately. I usually do.
Oh, you're the
Blasphemy.
CEO, so like it's more your job to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
interacting with people.
for sure, definitely. I do have to keep track of people and stuff. So yeah, the first thing that I do typically is check messages. I usually do it from my phone or my iPad rather than the desktop. So I usually sit on like the couch or something, kind of relax, and just kind of like get my brain to start thinking about what's gonna happen. Um, and then yeah, I'll do some writing in the morning as well, while also looking at catching up on stuff and figuring out where things are at, where people are at, all that kind of stuff. I do that for like usually about an hour or so, and then I hop onto the computer. Also working from home right now, pretty much exclusively, and then I will check in on with the team because usually about that time, 6:30 to 7 is when the team starts working. Go say hi to them usually, um, and then from there I get into like whatever specific high focus tasks I might have to do, and then I do that until about 10 a.m. Or well, it depends. Sometimes between like 9 and 10, I do that. So there's like 3-4 hours that I'm working on that stuff, and then from 9 onwards, it's kind of like collaboration time. So if I need to get a meeting with someone on the team, or like if I'm going to like meet with Jacob or something, or um, I'll get a meeting with maybe someone like externally. I usually try to get it in between 9 and noon if I can. It also works well because if I'm doing business calls with people in the U.S., I usually just say
It's got to
like,
be in the morning.
yeah, it got to be in the morning, right? I usually just say like, I'm on West Coast time, but West Coast time afternoon. That's usually what I tell people because it's just more simple than to try to explain where I
Mm-hmm.
am, and then people have to be like, oh, I have to go get my time zone app. So I just say West Coast afternoons, and that works out
Mm-hmm.
because when I start work at 4 a.m., that's like 11 a.m. or noon in the West Coast now because of the time change. I think it's noon actually,
Yeah,
right at
the
4
time
a.m.
change always throws me off.
Yeah, so it works out really well for when I need to do stuff with the West Coast, which is pretty often, honestly, because we run off some operations out of there as well.
A bit of
Um,
trivia for people interested in Japan is they tried daylight savings time for a while, and then everyone hated it and they got rid of it.
Smart choice.
And they called it, I think they called it summertime. Summertime. I think that's what it was called, but I don't remember.
Yeah, that does sort of ring a,
Sama.
a little bit of a bell. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, summertime. So summertime, also known as daylight savings time.
nice. I imagine they ran it in the summertime. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like my morning routine is checking in on things right away. Think about the strategy for the day or the week. Then work on some high focus tasks for a couple hours. Then collaborate with team members or do business calls. And then I try to be done between noon and 1, so that's 8 to 9 hours of work, just like you. And then in the afternoon, there I'm trying to like work on my own projects or just kind of let my brain um like subconsciously work on things, because like this year
Mm-hmm.
we did a lot of stuff. We worked really hard this year, and it's not sustainable the way that we worked. So I'm trying to you know restructure life going forwards.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about why I asked you about routines, but before I do, I noticed. Well, first I noticed that Sonic asked about which bank is more popular, J.P. Morgan Chase or Bank of America. I have no idea why you're asking that. Um, they don't have either of those banks in Japan. Is this like a U.S. thing? Um, and
um
then, but anyway, Josh asked. I just didn't want to ignore Sonic, but Josh asked here. He said, "We wish it was summertime all the time in the UK too." And I just had to point out that there's a word for everlasting summer in Japanese, which is tokonatsu. It's like toko is like always summer.
that's it.
Um, and it's just it's I love it when there's a word in Japanese that doesn't exist in English.
Another
So
language, yeah.
yeah, tokonatsu. Because once I was talking to Ray when we were first dating, like in 2013, and we were talking about I think like Thailand or something, and she was saying how she really wanted to go to Thailand because she always
Oh,
wanted to live somewhere, or she wanted to have tokonatsu, which is like forever
right,
summer.
forever
She wanted
summer.
to live in warm weather forever. Um, I thought it was a cool word. Anyway, the
I like
reason
it.
I was asking about your routine is because I wanted just people to think about their routine when it comes to studying. Because my work routine started as a study routine. This wake up early and do your thing that's most valuable right away used to be my flashcards that I did because I used to study with only flashcards because I didn't have NativShark. But um, and I did that for years, and I realized that pretty much any day I didn't study right when I woke up was a day that I didn't study. Period. The only exception to that was if I went to a cafe,
Hmm.
uh, because I liked going to cafes and studying at them. So you'll notice that my work routine now is like wake up early and do something valuable, go to a cafe and do something valuable. And those used to be the ways that I studied, but now they're
Yeah,
the ways that I get my most productive work done.
right.
And I've talked to thousands of students also trying to learn Japanese over the many years we've been doing this. And a lot of those conversations end up being like, how do I just can't study every day? I keep falling behind.
Right.
And almost all of those people, it seemed like they didn't have a time that they always studied.
Hmm.
Like we talk about habits and routines and study sanctuaries a lot and using NativShark. And maybe we'll teach more of that in the core studies. But I think in some ways it's one of the most difficult parts of learning a language or anything that takes a lot of, that has a high volume.
Hmm.
If you want to learn, programming or piano or something, you need a high volume of practice and exposure. And you're not going to get it unless you find a way to add up all the hours necessary.
Right.
And so I've talked to a lot of students that had trouble, and usually they're not being consistent at the time they study and or in the place they study.
Hmm.
So just something to think about. The problem here is that it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, so I can't just give you a solution for your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me in my life, like you say. When I have not studied something consistently, it's always been because I didn't set a real time that I was going to do it at, and it didn't link it to an activity, um, which is most times. The times when I have been successful is exactly that. Like I do the opposite. Okay, I do link it to a time, and I do link it to an activity, like you just mentioned. So yeah, I've got the same thing, um, which is kind of what I'm trying to do with like the afternoons now, like, and link studying, um, it to a like an afternoon event. I don't quite have it figured out yet, but like I know me now versus me like 8 years ago is like I know that it's possible now, and I'm not like confused as far as like how to learn something or how to get something into a schedule. It's just a matter of like getting it to where it's going to be consistent, and like I know it's going to work. Like I know that the method is effective. So like it's about like, how do I say it? It's nicer to be on like this side of the equation versus 8 years ago when I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing and I don't know if this is gonna work. And so now I can sit over here and like we can have this conversation and I can be like, yeah, it works, and I'm not doing it right now, but like I know there's a path, you know. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up is that sometimes these habit linking and like task linking, sometimes it happens for like a season of time in your life, and you do it for like 4 months, 6 months, a year, and then for a while you stop for, and then something happens, and that's fine because it works. You can start again. Like you don't need to feel like, oh, I tried once and I failed. I only did it for 6 months and I'm never gonna be productive again in my life. Like sometimes like I've had those thoughts in my head before, but at this point I realize that's not the case. Like you can go on and off of these kinds of things depending on what's going on in your life. Once you know a pattern that works for you on how to be productive, it's like don't worry, don't worry about it. Like you have the capability. Just find the time and commit to it, and it'll work out. Yeah,
Indeed.
which is where I'm
Like
at
Cinder
the
just said,
moment.
habit stacking is super powerful. I
Mm.
agree. I call it habit tagging when I want to add a new habit to my stack of habits, but maybe stacking is a better way
Yeah,
to
I like
phrase it. I don't know.
habit stacking. It's
Habit
kind of neat.
stacking is nice.
Yeah, it's a good way to
This is how I go to the
put it.
gym actually.
Mm.
I almost always join a gym when I move somewhere, um, and I move a lot, or I have. I'm trying not to do that as much because it
Yeah.
costs too much money to move to a new country every 6 months. Um, but I've only had a routine, and I specify routine specifically, that involved going to a gym twice in my life. Once was in Sapporo in 2015,
Hmm.
and once is now. And the reason that I go to the gym now is because I'm kind of screwed if I don't, because it's part of the steps to make my day work. So the way that works is I mentioned I take the baby to his grandmother's, to my mother-in-law's house. I have to do that because if no one's watching the baby, then no one's going to be getting any work done today.
Yeah.
Um, and we pay her for that. She's not like just doing it for free, because that would be a huge ask to have someone watch their baby 8 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So I have to take the baby right
Right.
at like 8:39. So I joined a gym right by her house, and I intentionally shower at the gym because
I think that's so funny.
Yeah, well, now I go take the baby there, and it's like I want to go work at a cafe, but I haven't taken a shower, and I feel pretty gross. So it's like, well, I guess I'll go to the gym and take a shower. But I gotta, if I'm at the gym, I might as well exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And I love listening to podcasts and shadow loops and things like that. And this is basically my only chance to do that is when I go to the gym. So there's the other motivation there is like that's also my habit of getting to listen to the stuff I want to listen to
Yeah.
is only happening when I'm at the gym. So it's like, all right, I'll go to the gym and do that. I pay extra for the gym to give me towels because if I have to pack my own towel and then wash it when I get home, it just adds more of a hassle, and I'm less likely to do it. I pay extra for a locker to keep my gym shoes in because if I have to bring my own shoes, I'm probably not going to go to the gym because it's a hassle to bring your own shoes. Um, so
Yeah.
I'm in this situation where I had to take the baby there. I want to go work at a cafe and I need to take a shower before that. And the gym is where all that stuff happens. Like it's just, it happens in between those two things. So I end up going to the gym pretty much every day. Um,
Except for Wednesday.
yeah, not Wednesday, which is today, because
Yeah.
her mom doesn't watch the baby on Wednesday and we do the podcast
Right.
and we have someone else come to watch the baby and she watches him here for a little bit and then at her house
Right.
after.
I just wanted to like add that in because, um, again, in real life, there can be exceptions to different routines, and it doesn't destroy. Because sometimes when people are trying this kind of thing for the first time, they often feel like, oh, I have to every single day of my life has to be exactly the same then in order for this to be effective. But like it doesn't. There can be
Yeah.
there can be some flexibility. But yeah, I mean that sounds very effective for you.
Yeah, it works. And
Yeah.
I even end up going to the gym even if I'm super sore from the day before and I can't really exercise.
Mm.
So I'll do almost no exercising there. I'll exercise for 3 minutes on some muscles that are not sore, take a shower, and go to the cafe.
That
Which
makes
kind
me
of goes
laugh.
back to the issue of that's how I used to do flashcards, right? Is maybe I don't have enough time to do them today, but I'd still go through and just hit good, which was like the smiley face now in
Yeah.
NativShark. I would go and just look at them and hit good, 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 good quickly rather than not do it.
Mm.
If I'm too sore to exercise, I still go to the gym for a couple minutes, even though I'm not like getting ripped that day. I go to the gym. I'm not getting super strong,
Not getting
but I
swole.
went. I went, and
Mm.
that's the hard part, right? Is I had to go.
Yeah.
Did you open, you know, Native Shark and just go through your review deck, even if you weren't really there too much, like in your head? Did you go
Yeah.
through and just hit the smiley face? Because if you did do that every day, some of those days you're actually gonna be there in your head, and you'll be surprised how much stuff actually sticks.
That's what I've been like I've been seeing this kind of in the past week or so, like people kind of talking around the edges of this inside of the community, and they're not quite realizing that that's what they're talking about, but they're saying like my in my studies I feel like sometimes um, it takes too long, or like these kinds of things, or like um, someone was asking like how do you stay consistent, and somehow like we need again this is another like user experience thing where we need the platform to inform the student of this better, and then also we should probably talk about it in probably some core lessons, but the actual important part of your studies, especially with a program like NativShark, is that you show up every day and you press the buttons. It's like just because one day you showed up and you didn't feel like you remembered things very well, it doesn't mean you need to like slam I forgot on every single card and then screw up your review cycle. Like days happen where you don't remember things as well as other days. That doesn't mean you forgot it entirely. If there's some part of your mind that's like this feels familiar to me, that's actually often enough, and you can kind of just move on because chances are the next time you see it, you're actually going to remember it.
Even if you don't feel like that, it's enough.
Most times, yeah. It's just the consistency, like the fact that it will show up again is what. If okay, this wouldn't be true if it wasn't going to show up again. Like let me say that. Like
Yeah.
this would not be true. That's correct. If it was not going to show up again, or if the content didn't reuse itself all the time, like use the words iteratively and build upon them for like the rest of the plot. Like if that wasn't the case, then your fears are valid and you are going to forget. But because it is a system that repeats itself and builds upon itself, and there's an SRS in there, um, yeah, it's all good. Um, it's not gonna. It's consistency. That's the thing. Like, so we talk. That's what we talk about all the time. Consistency is the key to success in
Yeah. I
in
talked about
in
how
studies and life.
that routine was for me studying, and I used to do that, for example, when I lived in Tokyo and I was teaching English in like 2013, 2014. And I did that every morning, right? I would wake up and study flashcards while having my coffee. But that's because I worked in the afternoons and evenings because I taught English.
Mm,
But on Saturday and Sunday, I worked in the morning. And I probably went out drinking with friends the night before too. So
yeah.
I wasn't like gonna wake up at 5 in the morning and study before I went to work. So what I always ended up doing was just, I'm like on the train or in between lessons, I would just be basically spamming the good option in my flashcards
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like thinking about it even. I was just looking at it and hitting good, which is smiley face.
Mm,
Um, Even if I didn't remember it at all, because it's like, oh, I forgot it, but I can send that back as a card I forgot the next time I see it. Who cares?
yeah.
Because it'll come back because it's a SRS. So I did this for years. Like this is when I had, so it was 2013, 2014. So I probably had like 16,000 flashcards or something back then, maybe more, something like that.
Yeah, which
Um,
is kind of nuts and maybe a little bit extreme, but we've talked about that already.
yeah, and it gets back to this thing is once you have that many flashcards, they start to not be that useful
Right.
because you're at a level where you're probably getting exposed to the language enough that life is your SRS.
Yeah.
And I don't do flashcards for Japanese anymore. I probably will once we add some of these new sentences to our sentence library. I probably will go through the learn and review process in NativShark for them, um, specifically for types of things that I want to be able to say or write in my own Japanese.
Mm,
Um, but if it's just something I want to understand, yeah, usually I only need to hear it a couple times to remember it now. Whereas I used to have to encounter it dozens of times to remember it when I was at a
right.
lower level.
Of course. Yeah. Another thing I'm trying to um, learn or get into the habit of consistently studying is like I want to take um, my development skills to a higher level so I can just kind of do some stuff for fun, basically, outside of work. Um, and working that into like my life so I consistently put in some studies is challenging and makes me wish that we were teaching it with NativShark because it would be so much easier. Because that I do study, like I can run that every single day. Like again, something about the way we made it's just really easy to do, like to show up and get through it. Because it's like the only thing I don't like when we've talked about this is sometimes I don't like how long some of the lesson portions are in the unit. Which we've talked about, and we want to get a consistent size. That's the only thing that sometimes demotivates me is I'll get to that part and I'll be like, oh my God, this is so long and I don't want to sit here and read this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, and that doesn't happen that often. Um, Besides that, it's like I think it's a really great experience and I enjoy it a lot. Um, Even if like it's mostly review or whatever, it's super useful. Like I'm having a great time going through it. Um,
Yeah, you need NativShark engineering.
I know, right? That's what I want. I want it real bad. Oh, that'd be
But
so
aren't you
sweet.
and Jacob gonna start pair coding pretty soon?
Yeah, on Thursdays once he gets down here. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be fun. I think that'll help me feel more motivated in like the afternoons when I'm doing like my like think about the universe sessions to how I want to do that because like once a week, um, we'll be meeting up and I'll be like not wanting to waste time. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
yeah, and then on that note too, another reason why we want to do that um, paracoding on Thursdays is so that we have a structure for when we get back to hiring and onboarding new people, which is pretty exciting. Um, let's see. I was gonna say something else about habits, but I can't remember. Hmm.
So
So yeah, it's a journey for sure. But I'm really liking the new routine that I'm trying to build with like starting at 4 a.m. and being done between noon and 1. Like it's fun. I like it. It feels good. I really like having like I've never hard committed to this time segment before. Like I've done it like periodically. So I'm kind of looking forward to it and like getting it to be like a normal thing cuz having the entire afternoon to be able to think about the universe and do other things is like after having already worked like 9 to 10 hours is like sweet. It's like okay, cool. And then coming in the
yeah.
evening, you're tired at 9 or 10 o'clock, and it's great, and you just go to bed. Feels good.
Hmm.
So yeah, really looking forward to it becoming a bit more regular. Hmm.
Exciting. We have some topics.
Yeah.
What should we discuss next?
Um. Well, let's talk maybe a bit about the fact that we've been doing NativShark for a year. How's that been? How's
It has
business?
been
How's
a
business been?
ride.
Yeah, it's been a ride. Let me write this one in here. NativShark has been around. How's it been? Yeah, so I guess for those who don't know, we founded NativShark. Like I think like in the founding documentation, I think it's November 24th, 2019. So we're just past 1 year of NativShark being a thing. Before that, we ran a different company, which a lot of people in our community who've been around for a long time know about it, but it's Nihongo Shark. And we ran that together for like 4 or 5 years. That thing existed for 7 years before we started NativShark. Um, but we ran it
I
together for
created it in
2012.
yeah, I actually made the website in 2011, like in
Oh,
I think
okay.
December, but
Gotcha.
no one knew about it until 2012. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We didn't start working together
So
until like 2014, 2015.
yeah, it's hard to remember what things were like back then, but to give people some perspective, like in 2012, 2011, you didn't really have many of these blogs that had courses or products or even things like lead capture, like email capture,
Yeah.
was sort of an emerging trend, like having, for example, some offer that you give to a visitor to get them to sign up for your email newsletter,
Yeah.
which is you can't go to any website without getting that now. And to the point where
Often
it's like
Monster was like
a
new
really,
back then or something.
yeah.
That's like all there was.
Well, I got like lifetime access to Opt-in Monster when it was nothing. Like
Yeah.
I paid almost nothing for it because it was a small company. And I got lifetime and they just kept growing and growing and I just kept using it for free. It's kind of like the people who got lifetime for Native
Native
Shark
Shark.
during the sale.
I
Yeah.
know. In 8 years they'll be like, oh my god.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so I read a lot about, how to build up a blog with readers and stuff. And it said, offer them something of value to sign up for your email newsletter. So you would think that you would have like a 2-page PDF, like the 10 secrets to learning Japanese or something ridiculous like
Yeah.
that. Um, but instead, mine was like a 100-page PDF book. It was like
Yeah.
you basically got the earliest version of the Hacky Japanese Super course just by joining the newsletter, and it was like 100 pages or something. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. Um, it was overkill, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was writing that in December 2011 because I wrote that before I even launched the site. I wrote the
Secrets
first
1 to
version of the
10
book.
are all consistency. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah, be consistent.
He knows.
It's true. Yeah,
Yeah. Ty says he didn't even know that existed. I would
why
believe that
not?
he didn't. He came later, so I don't think he ever saw that.
Yeah, the
The
earliest
early.
readers were, yeah, they were around a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember when I had just launched the website and it had like maybe one or two blog posts, and I went on some Facebook or other group for like learning Japanese, and I posted like, "Hey guys, look, I made a website for learning Japanese. What do you
Yeah.
think?" And this is I had built this website by myself with WordPress, and back
Yeah.
then even it wasn't that easy to build a site with WordPress. I was like reading books on how to do HTML and
Right.
CSS,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what I was doing, and I worked really hard on it. And so I went in this group and was like, "Hey guys, look, I have a website on learning Japanese," and I got like two comments, and one of them was, "Don't quit your day job." And
Hell yeah. That's
I was
some
like,
real
"Oh,
positive
well,
feedback
that's
from the community.
yeah." I was like, "Okay, well, that sucks," but I did quit my day job eventually.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Sucker.
Yeah, man. That's what happens. Like you put yourself out there, and especially on the internet, especially back then, people were so likely to just criticize and be like, "Nah, this sucks. Do again.
Well, it
Quit."
did. It did suck, I think.
Yeah, it did, but like I don't know. Nowadays, at least what I try to do when someone's trying to work on someone, and I can see that they're putting legitimate effort into it, even if it sucks, or like I don't just be like it sucks, quit. I'll be like, all right, this is a good effort. Here's like two things you can try if you want to take this further. If you're happy with it, then that's fine. But like that's how to be more constructive in a community
Yeah, and
rather
the other,
than
I said there was like
sucks.
two comments, and the other one, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was like, I'm excited, like, cool, like I'm excited to see how it grows or something.
Mm,
Because it wasn't much to look at, but might grow. And
yeah,
this goes back to negativity bias that as humans we focus in on the negative feedback. If you get 100 comments on something you created and 99 are positive and one is negative, you're just going to remember the negative one.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's something that you just have to deal with, not just as a business owner, but just as a human being in the age of the internet.
yeah. Like you're gonna get a lot of negative feedback. Um,
Or a little bit of it that feels like
a lot.
a
Yeah.
lot.
Okay, I see. I mean, well, I mean, okay. You did. There is such thing as like there being a lot of negative feedback, but I do agree that it's usually the lesser percent. If you're genuinely making something that like you believe in, you stick with it over time, and it's good. Like the amount of positive feedback will overcome the amount of negative, but it'll feel like you said, it'll feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're getting tons of negative feedback. Um, but like even in the negative feedback though, as long as it's not saying don't quit your day job because it's not useful, but a lot of negative feedback is actually super beneficial, and it can really help you.
Yeah, it can be.
It can really help you know the direction you want to take things, or it can be like help you be like, wait, how did they get that impression? That's completely not what I was going for. Like, am I doing something? And you can analyze it and be like, okay, I'm messaging really wrong, or you can be like, nope, that person was just weird. Like, there's nothing here. Like, I don't know where that came from. That happens sometimes, but a lot of times, yeah, it can be really beneficial to help you be like
Yeah, if it's
retrospective or
constructive, which is
yeah,
just unfortunately not as common.
yeah. But I mean, that's one of the things that we are trying to do, or at least I spend a lot of time on it with the team and stuff, with the NativShark community, is to actually build a constructive environment. And I want to say that we've succeeded pretty
Yeah,
well up to this point.
we get great feedback. both positive and negative.
Well, I mean,
So
not only that, like
our
not to
community
us,
is
but I
pretty
just mean like
special.
the community to each other as well is what I'm talking about. Like when the community, someone from the community is saying that they're working on something or doing something, whether it's studies or otherwise, it's like the quality
Hmm.
of feedback that happens is really high, and that's like not on accident. Is what I'm saying. Like we've been working towards that a lot, and I'm proud of it. Like the community's doing great. Everyone's yeah, it's cool. I like it because one of the big motivations for getting it to having the community and doing what we're doing with it is that exact reason. Like you can go anywhere on the internet and you can find people who are not going to give you good feedback on your studies or give you good feedback on whatever project you're working on. That's fine. That exists easy, but it's hard to find somewhere that you do get quality feedback. And so that's why it's like, all right, I want to build somewhere that you do get quality feedback and it is a good environment. Um, so, and since we get to run it, we get to make it that way. And that's what's fun about it.
Hmm.
Native Wowza says, yeah, the Discord, name of the people there is one of my favorite parts of NativShark. Yeah, for sure. A exclamation point Discord works. Cool. Yeah, go join. Um, but yeah, okay, so Nihongo Shark, 2011, 2012, sudden starts. We start doing business together like 2015. Um, and then that was like contrasting Nihongo Shark to our second business, Native Shark, which, like I said, has been around for a year now. Big difference. Massive difference. Totally. And then I want to say we were, I mean, it's no shock to some of those people that have been following us for a while, but they're completely different, and we definitely underestimated the difficulties with getting Native Shark off the ground versus what our experience from Nihongo Shark. Like some
Yeah.
skill sets and experience transferred for sure, um, but a lot of it didn't, and a lot of Native Shark's first year has been us learning constantly, making mistakes and recovering from them. Um,
Yeah. And even if for the skills that did transfer, sometimes the scope of the work to be done was too great for those skills to be enough. And
yeah.
an example of that is I just wrote that that post on our Medium blog
Yep.
about building our content production systems. And yeah, Ray and I are really good at teaching Japanese. We know how
Mm-hmm.
to write a good lesson because we've written over 1,000. We know how to write example sentences that are natural and what kind of context you would write them in and all these things. But for a company like Native Shark to do what it needs to do, we need more sentences than two people could create because we want to have more content than students could possibly study before the end of next year.
Yep.
For example, like there should be years worth of content, which the two of us, it would take us years to create it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. So you have to build a
like
system.
yeah, imagine starting a blog. Could you write blog posts faster than people could read them? Probably not. Um, and it's a lot more complicated when you have not just lessons and example sentences, but units which are cohesive and they
Mm,
have an order. And there's the C tracking, which is the plus one iteration, and all those things.
right.
Then these systems also need to scale into other subjects, which could be languages or anything else.
Right.
So yeah, we know a lot about how a language should be taught, perhaps, but that doesn't mean that we know how to teach other people to teach how to to teach a language,
Right. So
teach
it's
other
like
people to teach how to teach.
like the 8 to 10 years of experience with like learning about how to teach language and how to um, you know, build stuff that makes sense to students and build good quality, like quality control and stuff. That all carried over from Nihongo Shark days to Native Shark. But the scalar aspect of it, of the size and complexity of Native Shark, that was new. Um, and is a challenge that I want to say we are overcoming. I don't want to say we have it totally solved yet, but like if you go read the blog posts, like yeah, you've made a ton of progress, which is awesome. And I think that is the most important part when doing and being in business like we are. Like what makes us not stop? Like, why are we not why haven't we quit? you know, or why are we not going to quit? And I think it's because of our capacity to grow our abilities and our belief in that basically anything is possible, just given time and you know enough strategic thought and reaching out to people when you don't know what to do. All things that we're working on doing, like that we've learned to do. But I think what I'm getting at saying is that the difference between a company that's growing and a company that's not is, and this I think this applies to life too. But when you look back over the past year, if you look back at that year and you say, "Yikes, I did XYZ wrong, and I could have done this instead," and then the result would have been, I think, better. I think that in itself is a sign of growth, and why I'm really happy with our past year. If we looked over the past year and we were like, "Yeah, I don't know what we could have done, or I don't know what happened," then I would be like, "Oh, this is concerning." But when we look back over the past year and it's like, okay, this happened, that was really good. This happened, that wasn't good. But we could have done this because of what we know now. Now I feel like that's a really good position to be in. That's kind of
Yeah.
like how I think about my personal life as well at this point. It's like with my own character growth as a human. It's like if I can look back to 6 months ago and be like, wow, that was cringe. Okay, then that means I've changed, right? Because back
Yeah,
then I
and
wasn't trying. I was trying to make the best choice at the time. But now I know that I could have made a better choice. That means that I gained knowledge, experience.
yeah, this goes back to something really interesting. What you mentioned growth.
Mm.
I used to teach English in Tokyo for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I talked to hundreds of students in lessons, and I met a lot of interesting people. And when I talked to old people, I used to like to ask them for to give me what they thought was good advice on
It's
life.
a fun
So
question.
I'd tell them something like, I'm in my mid 20s. What advice do you have for me? And 90% of the advice I got was terrible. It was so bad. It was, and it confused me at first. And then after a while, I realized that when you're a kid and you grow up, you think that the older you get, the wiser you become. And what I came to learn was that that's only true if you focus on growing. So Caleb mentioned that he looks back at 6 months before and thinks, oh, that was cringe. I think all of us can look back on something in our adolescence or childhood that we look back on and think that was cringe. If you're 25, you could look back on high school and think, am I frozen?
No, you're
No.
good.
Okay.
Hmm.
If you're 25 and you look back on high school, you could think, oh, I can't believe I did that or said that. And you feel like an idiot because you're wiser than you were. How many people who are 45 years old are thinking that about when they were 35? And I don't know how many. It's hard because I people don't talk about it, but I know it's not everyone because I was talking to so many of these people that should have been really knowledgeable and wise that had terrible advice.
Mm.
Advice that I thought was not only bad, but just riddled with, confirmation bias.
Right.
For example, if you got a job at a single company and you kept that job for, I'll give an example, Tyler, since you just asked. So, and one example would be you should get a job at a big company and work there until you retire because they did that. And it probably was good advice 30, 40 years ago because companies in Japan did hire you and keep you for 30 to 40 years until you're retired.
Yeah.
And they did only give you promotions based upon seniority. Um, if you look at the state of the world, I don't think that's going to be the case. For example, I know
Yeah.
that, yeah, I don't want to get into all that stuff, but that's one example. Um, So things like that, like get a job and keep your head down, was kind of like a lot of the advice that I got from these people. Because it's
Mm,
very hard to give advice that's not that if that's what you did,
right.
because you don't want to think that you made a mistake with the last 40 years of your life.
I want to say the.
And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and yet on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that are a lot older than me that are a lot wiser than me. You listen to, podcast interviews of, for example, business experts who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And these are people who have been growing every
Yeah,
year of their lives and experiencing things and learning. And they do have really great advice. So I think I came to realize that it's not age that makes us wiser. It's like growth doesn't, you're not like a plant. You don't just grow because you're sitting in the sun.
yeah.
You're a human being and you grow because you put yourselves in situations that cause you to grow.
That's what I was gonna add too. Is like I think it um building the ability to be introspective and cultivate your own self-awareness both in business and in like your personal life, I think is like the catalyst for the differentiator between those people who do grow and can offer sage advice when they're 60 and those who don't grow and can't offer sage advice when they're 60 is I feel like starting with the ability to be self-aware, you know, and be introspective. I want to say, and I don't know because I'm not 60 yet, but as far as where I'm at in my life now, I have found a lot of enjoyment from life and a lot of success in business by doing those two things. So it's been working in the direction that I would want things to go. And people who are older and wiser than me have also said that that is an effective strategy for cultivating growth is, um, being self-aware. And it's not easy always
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, I think that's what really makes a difference.
Yeah, I think mindfulness is
That's another
equally
word.
important,
Yeah, another word for it.
um, because you'll notice if you do listen to lots of interviews of lots of highly successful, high performing people, for example, you'll hear that a lot of them talk about meditation. Um, and usually they talk about how it brings them clarity and makes them more focused. I would guess that it makes them instead more mindful of what is going on in their head and around them.
Right.
If you get angry about something, I 100% guarantee you there is some other emotion beneath that anger, for example. Try to focus on something for 10 seconds straight, and I'll bet you can't, like your breath or anything really, um, because you don't really control your thoughts very well. It's nice to think that you're in control of what you're thinking about, but you're probably not.
Right.
And so it does take, Caleb called it self awareness or mindfulness, to become more aware of what's going on in your head and what's causing you to do the things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of on the introspective level, but then you also have to consider, the external world and those things.
Right. And even with keeping all these things in mind, you're still going to make choices that in 6 months you're going to be like, wait, why did I make that choice? Like even
Yeah.
when you have the best intention, and this is something that like I've really been thinking a lot about lately and been learning and talking with some mentors about. But with that knowledge that even the choices you make now with your best intentions in 6 months or a year, you might be like, wait, why did I make some of those choices? And some of them you'll be like, I did a really good job with those choices. And some of them you're gonna be like, wow, that could have been better. Um, one guy I was talking to, he was saying to me that, like, especially like as a CEO or if you're in a leadership position of any sort, he's like, well, your job is essentially to make decisions, and so what's important is that you are making decisions, because the worst thing that can happen is that you stop. If you stop making decisions, then you didn't make a choice, and you don't that then that became the choice that you didn't make the choice, and then you can stagnate, or things will unfold in a certain way that's probably less favorable to you if you instead were actively making decisions. So instead of worrying about whether or not it's going to be the best choice, instead he's saying like think about just the fact that you are making a choice and then stick with that choice. Um, you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the act of making the decision
Yeah.
is the important part.
Yeah, I think if you're worried about if it's a good decision or not too much, you're just gonna freeze up and do nothing.
Yeah,
Some of the best things that we've done were done on a whim. um,
yeah,
Caleb was talking about the community, for example. That existed really just randomly because I saw there was the thing called Slack, which a lot of people probably know about now, which
yeah,
had just been released, and companies were starting to use it for internal messaging in lieu of email.
right.
And I just heard about it. And then I saw one website that exposed it to their community to make it a chat community. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And the next day, I just emailed our newsletter and I was like, hey, look, I made a Slack for us. Let's go chat in it. And
Yeah.
people started chatting in it. And then I don't, maybe this was before you even joined Nihongo
No,
Shark.
I was there.
No, it wasn't. It was
Yeah,
there. It
yeah. I
was
helped set
okay.
it up.
And then I was like, all right, that's cool. And then I sort of lost interest. And then Caleb just took over.
Yeah.
And then one day he messaged me like, hey, we should move this to Discord. And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude, do your thing. And then
Yeah.
he moved it to Discord. And now it's the community, which is a huge part of the business.
Right.
Um, Another example is the actual birth of
Which,
Native
by
Shark
the way,
wasn't.
I moved it to
Yeah.
Discord just because, like, I thought it was a better community building platform. And this was like before Discord was, at that time, Discord was still all about gaming. They weren't about, like, now Discord is a community platform, and their whole business is like, let's build communities on Discord. Like, you can be education, you can be business, whatever. Like, that's their thing. But like when I moved us from Slack to Discord, I was like, the Slack's kind of dead. Like, I don't like the direction it's going. I think it's a boring platform to build a community on. And I think Discord, even though it's about gaming, is a better place. And like, I was like, let's just do it. So it's like, I didn't, it was a great decision, but I didn't I didn't stress about it. I just kind of like, people will move if they want to, and then we can restart. And we got like 30. The Slack had like 100 members, but like basically all were inactive. And then when I moved to Discord, I think we started with like 15 people came over. That was it. But then it's been, scalar ever since, you know.
Yeah. And even Native Shark exists based on a decision that I made on a whim, which was to start writing daily lessons.
Right.
We would have never had a company that taught Japanese unless I was going for a walk along the Tama River in Tokyo, which is like in the south part of Tokyo. And I was just walking along the river listening to a podcast, and it was Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is John Lee Dumas's daily podcast. And it was like episode 1,000 or something. And I thought, whoa, 1,000 episodes just because he does a podcast every day?
Hmm.
What if I wrote a Japanese lesson every day? And I
Yeah.
went home that afternoon, wrote a lesson, emailed it to our newsletter, and then at the bottom of the lesson, I just wrote, "Hey, do you guys like these lessons? Because I was kind of thinking about doing them every day."
Yeah.
And then a lot of people said, "Yeah, write lessons," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So then a couple weeks later, we started writing lessons every day, and we didn't miss a single day for almost a year. And then after we did that for a few years, it was like, whoa, we're actually teaching more Japanese than anyone. And I think we're doing a better job of it. So I was like, well, maybe we have a company that teaches Japanese. It's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe we have a system for teaching languages in general.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was a good decision. Just when I started writing the lessons, I just thought it sounded fun.
Right.
I did it on a whim.
It's just the choices you
So,
make.
but a lot of those decisions that I made on a whim, just because it sounded interesting, were not good, and they did backfire.
For
Um,
example, we killed all of the SEO that we had with Nihongo Shark when we started NativShark just because we didn't like certain parts about Nihongo Shark, and we were like, what should we do? Should we keep it up? Should we not keep it up? And we're like, oh, we don't like it. Let's not keep it up. So we redirected it, and yeah, that one didn't work out so well. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
I think we were really worried about the branding of NativShark
Yeah.
getting influenced by Nihongo Shark, and we just didn't want to be misbranded because branding is a huge part of what NativShark is and will become.
Yeah.
But because of that, we sort of overlooked the the business side of it, which
Yeah.
is that traffic is good for a platform.
Right. Well, we overlooked, like, now I can look back on it and be like, wait, that that'd be really simple. Just be like, this is like, I think the problem is this. At that time, we didn't think about Nihongo Shark and Native Shark as being separate enough.
Yeah,
Now it's obvious to us. Yeah. We thought it was
we
like a
just thought Nihongo
transition.
Shark was becoming Native Shark,
Yeah.
not that Nihongo Shark was over there and now Native Shark is this thing over
Right.
here.
Which is the actual reality. Like, Nihongo Shark, like, just to say it in clear terms, is a completely different entity and company and, like, brand that exists completely separate of Native Shark. And that's obvious now, but it wasn't a year ago to us. Um, and I think that's kind of what also influenced that decision being made the way that it was. But now I can look at it and be like, yeah, these two things could exist side by side. Speaking of which, like, we're kind of working on trying to bring it back. But so I mean, yeah, sometimes the decisions you make, um, I guess on a whim. I don't know if that one was on a whim, but I kind of feel like it was. That's my impression of that choice.
It didn't have our full focus, I'll say.
Yeah, that's kind of a better way to put it, I guess. Um, okay, on the note of, hold on, my throat. I gotta get some water. On the note of you starting to write daily lessons and how that led to HGS or Nihongo Shark that actually taught Japanese, which then led to, um, you know, Native Shark. Before you started writing them, I remember we had a conversation about how I wanted to build a all like encompassing one stop solution for learning languages and start it with Japanese. And I remember you being like, "Yeah, that's a cool idea, but that's basically impossible. You need so much content, it can't be done." More,
Mm.
not you didn't say like it can't be done, but you said that would be like really difficult. You said it'd be cool, but really difficult. But then like 2 months later, um, you were listening to that podcast while walking on the river, and then you started writing lessons, and then those lessons built up over time, and then they became the library of content that was required to make like the framework for building the platform that I wanted to make. And then during that time, I was constantly thinking about like the other half of the equation, like the how Native Shark got going. Like the one half is you being like, wow, I can write lessons. Why don't I just do that? And then they did it, and then you consistently did it for a year. So you built a library of content. The other half
Yeah.
is me thinking about always thinking about, okay, how can we turn this into like the courses are great and the website is great, but like how can we turn it into like a software application that is actually a system that will help people, like be a guide for them every step of the way? And how can we teach content in a way that like makes sense, like start to finish, so like the contextual iterative immersion, all that kind of stuff. And then at a certain point, I don't know when it was, I want to say it was 2018, we started talking about these things kind of together. Like you being like, "Hey, I've got all this content, and we have this business with Neighbor Shark," and then me being like, "Yeah, and I have all this ideas of how we can turn this into a software application and we can build a service. How do we put these two things together?" I think it was like 2018 is when we first started seriously trying to think about how that would become a reality.
Yeah, I was in Oregon, so whenever that was, 20, I think it was like,
18. It's June, I think. 2018. We in the Starbucks.
yeah, at the Starbucks. Was
Yeah,
that summer?
yeah, yeah. I think it was June.
So right
Um,
before I moved to San Diego.
yeah, actually,
Hmm.
a bit before.
Okay.
Hmm. Couple months.
Um,
Couple months. Yeah.
so there's that.
Did you like? Okay, my
But
question for you is I've never asked, but like, could you tell like, through the years before, like that was always like my intention, like that was the direction I was trying to. I had no idea how, but like that's what I was trying to like. I don't know, push things towards. Like that's the reality that I wanted to pull out of
yeah, I mean,
existence.
that's kind of why we partnered in the first place. Um, for me, Nihongo Shark was just basically a passion project. That's why the first time you mentioned it, I was like, oh, that's too much work
Yeah,
because
of course.
that was Nihongo Shark wasn't even my job. I just did it for fun on the side. And like I made some money, but it wasn't enough to live
Yeah.
off of. Most of my work was doing writing, editing, and translating. Um, so it's like, hey, build build a comprehensive platform for teaching Japanese. We weren't even talking about doing it for all languages. At least I wasn't thinking about it at that point.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how much work it would be for Japanese, and I was like, well, that's a lot of work. And so I didn't really think it sounded like that much fun to do. And but then I ended up making all the content anyway, so it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Um, but when we partnered, I kind of just said that I was like, I'm having fun with Nihongo Shark and teaching Japanese, but I'm not really focused on growing it into a new entity. And then you were really excited about that. So I was like, all right, yeah, let's just partner up. And
Yeah.
I did that on a whim also.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I remember that it was kind of like I don't know, a bit of a whim for me as well. Like I kind of like I wanted to build like a software company. Like that's like what I wanted to do. I didn't know what path that was going to be. Like I had a different one at the time. But then yeah, you're like, well, because I remember offering like something, and then you being like, nah, let's just like build a company and partner instead. It sounds easier. And I was like, all right, sure,
Yeah.
let's do it. And then yeah, and then we were sending social security numbers and and PayPal passwords, and while you were living in Thailand, and I was setting up a bank account, and they were like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Oh man.
I remember right after we partnered and I sent Caleb all the logins for basically for everything, for the website,
Yeah.
for the courses. And then at the bottom of the email or whatever, I wrote something like, please don't ruin my life or
Yeah.
something. Please don't screw me over. Because he could have just like deleted everything.
Just taking all the
But I
money.
don't know.
Yeah.
You got to take risks, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, and then from that point, like, because that was 2016, like we did a lot of good stuff with the Nihongo Shark. Like we took it, like from where it was to where we took it to where we turned into NativShark. Like we grew it so much. I was looking over that like kind of recently.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I guess I kind of like reflecting on it now. I didn't actually realize um kind of how successful we were with Nihongo Shark. You know,
Hmm.
for like the kind of business that it was. I think the reason why I didn't notice it at the time is because I was always comparing it to an entirely different kind of business
Yeah.
that could exist,
Like
and
a
I didn't.
software application.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But like in terms of
Yeah.
internet companies, like that you start and sell products from, like it was great. We did a really good job. Like we took the
Yeah.
revenue from when we partnered. Like revenue was like barely $1,000 a month. You know, and then by the time we ended, we were getting months between like 15 and 30 on a good month. Like
Hmm.
that was a lot of growth. It's just weird. Like in general, when things are happening, it's hard to have like a perspective on it. You know, and that's like kind of what I'm trying to like get better at in life. You know, it's like how to
Yeah.
understand more about what's happening when it's happening. You can never be perfect, but like, you know, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot earlier about how you've been talking to mentors and asking for advice, and I think it's part of it is just ask someone who has been in the situation
Mm,
trying to do what you're trying to do
yeah,
before.
I think that's such a good point. That can be one of the things that helps you understand perspective. Which is why I always
Yeah.
appreciate it when students come in and they ask us questions about like learning, or they come to the community. Like if you have a new student comes to the community and then they be like, I'm struggling with X, and then there's like 7 people that are like, yes, that's what happens, and that means you're on the right path. You know,
Hmm.
like I mean, a couple weeks ago there was a student that was talking about. They were saying that they keep feeling like the answers to like Japanese is like on the tip of their tongue all the time. Like it's right in their mind, but they feel like they're forgetting it. They're getting really discouraged because they've been feeling that way for um like a week and a half, and they're like, "Am I forgetting all my Japanese?" I'm like, "No, actually, that means you're about to get a lot better. Like that experience means your mind is
Yeah, I
like
remember that.
right about on that threshold where it's going to start creating things on its own for like the first time. Like new Japanese will come up that you didn't read before. You made it from your own mind, from the knowledge that you have. And I want to say that that student was around unit 100, I think. And NativShark was their first real attempt into Japanese. So that's like 100 units. It's like 100 days. It's like a long. That's like a pretty consistent chunk of time. On one hand, that's really short, but on the other hand, like that's like if you stuck at it for 100 days, that's a really long time to stick with one thing. But that's how long it took to get to that first feeling of like, oh no, but they thought they were forgetting stuff and it was going to get worse. But me and some other people in the community were like, no, 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 that's like it's a good place to be. Come back in 2-3 weeks, and then actually they did post in 2-3 weeks, and they're like, wait, I'm understanding things now. Like for the first time, I was able to create new sentences that were new that I hadn't heard before, and I was like, yes. So that's a good point, and that's of course that makes sense that would be true for life and business as well. Like talk to people who have succeeded in a similar space that you can look up to, and then they can give you perspective.
Yep.
But yeah, my 1 year perspective. So it's been 1 year since we changed, right? Is that I
Hmm.
am I am proud of what we did with Nihongo Shark.
Yeah. I guess um, my main thing during the last year has been figuring out how to put things into systems.
Yeah.
And you talk about looking back and feeling like you're a lot wiser today. If I knew what I did today about systems back when we joined forces for Nihongo Shark, it would have been wild.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah,
Man, we could have really had something going.
but it's fine because we can just do it now
Yeah.
because it is really hard to teach someone else how to do something complex because you have to know to an extreme degree how to do that thing perfectly.
Hmm.
And you need to be very clear about how it should be done. In the blog post that we mentioned earlier, I mentioned that, if you had an idea for a fantasy novel and you wanted to have someone else write it for you, how hard would that be? They'd get the characters wrong. They would get the voice of the story wrong. They'd
Right.
probably not space sentences and paragraphs the way that you would like them to be spaced. The length of the book probably wouldn't be right. They probably wouldn't build into a series the way you want it to build into a series. If you hire someone to make the cover art for the book, it's probably not going to be the cover art that you wanted. And if you know what you're doing, it's probably not going to fit. It's probably not going to fit the genre the way that it should with a book cover. You know, how about the blurb for the book? It has to be written a certain way if you want to get sales for it.
Right.
Imagine knowing all those things, but not being able to do them yourself because you're going to have other people do them and giving them instructions on how to do it. It seems impossible. And you think, well, I'll just I'll just write the book myself. I'll write the blurb myself. I'll tell the graphic designer myself what it should look like.
Mm.
And I'll give them feedback on their iterations of it. That's basically what we did for Nihongo Shark. We tried and tried again to get other people to make content for us, and it just never was good enough
Yeah.
because we weren't clear enough on what good content was. We hadn't broken it down enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just hire 20 freelancers and tell them to go write 1,000 lessons.
Yeah, it's
unless you want garbage lessons.
right.
To give an example, we've been training these Japanese writers to write Japanese sentences in their context for about a month now. We've had about 6 writers or so doing this.
Mm-hmm.
They're just starting to get it right. And we have given them a ton of instructions, like not just like general instructions on how to do it correctly, how to write for something, but also individual feedback on their sentences and why they're not wrong. So that's just a tiny piece of it, and then it scales out to the whole system, not just, so that's like a sentence. And then you have a set of sentences in like a vocab set or in a lesson. And then you have the lesson. Then you have the other studiables in the unit itself.
Mm-hmm.
How the unit fits into that milestone, how that milestone fits into the phase, how the phase fits into the subject.
The path.
The path.
Yeah.
Path,
how the path fits into the subject.
And how the path fits into the subject, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's starting at that minute level and having things be clear enough that you can have someone else do them, and then sort of backing up little by little until you have people able to build each part of the system to spec. And I didn't have a clue how to do that 5 years ago.
Right.
And it seems pretty straightforward now. It's a lot of work and it takes time.
Right. But now we have like the context for which it makes sense to be able to figure those things out, to be able to build those things out.
Yeah, I'm not saying what I used to say, which is that's like impossible. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. I kind of feel like most things are possible at this point. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just what I feel like. Most things are possible. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And it's probably less difficult than you might initially expect. Or it's way more difficult. It's one of the two. It's either way more difficult than you thought it was going to be or way less difficult than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah. I'm excited to have a wider library of content be released to students, and then to talk about standards of content. And then we can let students draw their own conclusions about the way other people are teaching languages, especially Japanese. Because if you just consider the fact that we've had 6 writers trying for over a month to write even a couple sentences that we would accept as natural, as fitting the context they're supposed to be in.
Right.
And I'll just say that no one else is doing it.
Well, to put it in business terms, right? Like from the content perspective of what of what NativShark is, that is the value proposition. Ultimately, from a business perspective, the value proposition is the systems that we have in our building for creating content. Like that's the competitive advantage, right? That's IP essentially that we have and that we're creating. In like user content or user student terms, it just means that you have a lot of really high quality content that you can look at and you can compare it to. But like from business side, it's like that is the value proposition more so than the like actual text itself, if you know what I mean, or the text, or like the process by which the content is made is more valuable than the content itself. That's what I'm saying from a business perspective.
Yeah. Just for our customer, which is students, it doesn't seem that way to them because...
Right. That's what I was trying to say, like the difference between the two.
If you just want to learn Japanese, you don't care about our system. You just want to learn Japanese.
Yeah, so to you, the users, students facing side, the customer side, it's like the content itself, that's what's valuable. You're like, oh, I want to know I just want to learn. But from the business side, once we've made it, right? So
Yeah.
what allows us to keep making, what allows us to scale, what allows us to have, more subjects, what allows us to
Yeah.
continually produce value is the competitive advantage that
Yep.
that we have. Um, and then there's a whole other facet of that from the software side of things and what we're doing. We mostly talk about content in writing on this podcast. We don't talk too much about.
That's just because I talk a lot about it.
Yeah,
That's why.
we don't talk too much about the software side of what we do, which is also equally, if not, I think sometimes more cool. The systems we have, the way that we
Yeah.
solve some of our technical problems for
I
doing
think
what we're
part of
doing.
that is that we have this hesitancy to talk about the software before it's built.
Hmm.
But I do talk about the content before it's out there.
Yeah, we just
I mean, a lot
gotta.
of the stuff I said about standards is going to affect the phase one content that's out there right now.
We just
For
have to have
example,
this
we are
podcast
going to
with Jacob
have,
sometime, and
yeah, for example, we're going to have context written and existing in the system for any sentence.
yeah.
There are thousands of sentences already in the platform that don't have that. So, we're going to go back and make sure those are up to standard. And it'll just be a nice bonus if you've already learned the sentence that you could just see oh, hey, look, there's a context it could have been used in. I already knew it, but whatever. Um, but yeah, we don't really talk about what's coming with software, and I think that we kind of have PTSD from January, where we talked a lot about the software that was coming, and then it took us forever to get it released, and it had evolved a bunch so that it was a lot better than what we had promised, but it was different than what we had promised. And I
Mm,
think it really sucked to tell people this software is coming, and then it didn't come right away, and then we're actually we said we're going to do this, but this is better, so we're releasing something different. And
mm,
to the end user, they've been thinking about what they were promised is going to come. They don't, so now you have to convince them that the new thing is better because it
yeah.
is. But so yeah, we kind of just are traumatized from doing that wrong. So I think we've been kind of really hesitant to say, hey, this is what we're planning to build. This is what we're working on next.
But what I'm
Even
saying
though
though
it
is
is something really exciting. Yeah.
there's a difference between talking about the features and then just talking about the software and how we built
Oh
what we
yeah.
built and how we are building what we're building. That I think we could do and would be fun to do at some point. And that's why I was saying we should have Jacob on and we should just have an episode where we talk about the actual building of the software and what we do and how we solve our
Yeah.
problems. I do think
Show
that
everyone your monstrous mind map that you guys made.
yeah, exactly. That thing is sweet. Our architecting session. I do think that a valuable lesson that we learned and that many companies before us have learned, especially those that are in game development, is that there's a balance between talking about new features and not talking about new features and how much you say when you say it. And yeah, I mean, we obviously had some difficulties in the beginning of this year with that. Um, and it ended up taking us 8 months instead of 4 months. But I mean, it feels kind of bad because it's you want to not be like everybody else, but it is par for the course. That's just what happens in software companies. You get features take longer to develop than you thought. You mess up the messaging. But what I'm happy about is that we did end up, we didn't quit, right? We ended up delivering, and it ultimately ended up being better than what we thought it was going to be. So yeah, it did take a lot longer than about double than what we expected. But hey, that's what everyone tells you. It's like one of those things everyone says. Everyone who has experience is it's gonna take twice as long or more than you think, and you're gonna be wrong. And you're like, yeah, I know. And then it happens, and you're like, oh shit, oh, I knew it was gonna happen, and then it still happened. So I don't know. It's good experience
That's
though.
what happens.
Yeah, it's good experience. So yeah, nowadays um, we talk about features, um, in a more strategic way, which that's always a balance
Like
too.
good. Yeah.
It's that's always like a struggle, and I think we're gonna continue um, to struggle and learn about that. Like, when do you start talking about new things because it's on the horizon? You want to hype people up about it versus you don't want to get people too hyped up for something that might end up taking longer because it's a difficult thing. But then if you totally build something, and then you just like cold drop it, sometimes it doesn't perform as well immediately because you didn't talk about it, right? So yeah, it's a struggle. New features is one of those things that like I still don't know perfectly how to like do messaging around it,
Hmm.
and I think we'll continue to uncover how to do that. But as far as like where current operations are at, both development and content wise, like I think we're in a really good place, and I like it now. Like it's good. Like entering December, it's like all right, it's really clear. Like we were saying last week, it's always been really clear what the vision of NativShark is and like what the product is and what it should be. Like that's always been really clear for us and for like a lot of people, like the team. Um, but now, excuse me, I feel like what we're doing this month in this moment is also really clear. So not just like
Yeah,
the vision, but like the path to getting there is now feeling like clear, basically, which is cool. You know,
indeed.
yeah, like focusing on the all this stability stuff that we've been doing has been really great and really rewarding to see. I see Native Wiles is saying that'd be really cool to hear about the architecting. Yeah, actually, I think that's a good idea. We should do that at some point.
Yeah, and I'll just sit here and ask the questions that people who don't know about architecting would be like asking.
Yeah. So, yeah, all in all, I would say year one of NativShark has been a success and a good experience.
Same.
And now it's looking forward to year two.
Year two is gonna be wild, I'm sure.
Yep. Who knows what's gonna happen? Um, let's see. Did you want to talk about the um the channel?
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right, well, let's talk about that, and then we can end it
Okay,
off.
just real quick.
Yeah, yeah,
So we
yeah.
had this sale for Black Friday sale, which was if you buy one, gift one free. So if you bought annual, you'd get a gift code to give annual to someone else.
Mhm.
And we created a channel in Discord called the Secret Santa channel. And you could write sort of your case for why you would like someone to give their free code to you. Because maybe you can't afford the platform or whatever reason. And I will say, I cannot read it because I just want to give it away to everyone. Um, and this goes back to sort of both the partnership thing with Caleb and I and the difference between Nihongo Shark and NativShark. Uh, for the longest time with Nihongo Shark, if someone emailed me and said they couldn't afford it, I just gave it to them. I just gave them the products, the courses. I just could not bear to think that me needing some money was standing between someone else learning Japanese and not learning it. So anytime anyone emailed us asking for something free, basically after I partnered with Caleb, it was like just let Caleb handle those emails because he can tell people they have to pay for things and I can't. Uh, but things are a lot different with NativShark because the thing between that someone saying they need it for free and the thing between them possibly learning and not learning the language is not just me wanting to pay my bills or go out to lunch tomorrow. It's also our employees' livelihood and the company's livelihood. And for me, there's this phrase I like to use sometimes, which is that 100% is easy and 99% is a bitch. Um, so I don't give anything away for NativShark to anyone anymore. To give an example, I made both my mom and dad pay for lifetime accounts because they want to learn Spanish with us eventually. I paid for a lifetime account personally out of my own
Yeah.
money. So now, because I don't give anyone the platform access to the platform for free, it's really easy to tell someone who's like, I can't afford it. What do I do? I'm sorry, everyone has to pay for it because I paid for it, my mom paid for it, and I got to pay
Yeah.
these employees' salaries, and they have to pay their rent and not starve to death. Um, so that mindset shift helped, but I still really just can't bear to read the Secret Santa channel because I just really want everyone to learn if they want to learn, and I, yeah,
Nico just being altruistic with his study vibes. Yeah, definitely. Like, um, I feel like it's been a personal journey for you going from, like, as you're talking about, like Neongo Shark and then Native Shark, and how that whole transition has taken place, for sure.
yeah. Another thing that a hard truth that I had to come to accept that I didn't want to believe was that people are more likely to actually learn if they pay for it.
Yep.
People that get it for free don't value it. You know, if you got it for free, you think, oh, maybe I'll study today. If you paid money for it and it is actually kind of a lot for you to pay for it, now you're kind of on the hook for it.
Yeah.
It's like, I spent all that money on it, I should do it. And you end up doing it. I didn't want that to be the case. The downside to this is that there are things like the messages we see in the Secret Santa channel that people would pay for it if they had the money and they just don't have it. And it's a bummer. I
Right.
remember getting, for example, you get an email from someone who says, I'm 14, I'm 15. I really want to learn Japanese with your program, but I don't have any money. I don't have a job. I asked my parents to buy it for me, and they said, why would we buy it for you? You'll just quit. You're not going to learn Japanese.
Mm.
And I would be sitting there at my computer like, what? How dare they say that to you?
Yeah. Of course you can
But
learn.
yeah, it's really unfortunate to think of someone in a situation like that, but that's something I've had to come to terms with. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way I think about things is like I do think about things in more logistical terms. So it's like
Mm.
I do see, like, in order to create something, in order for us to build what we want to build, like, it has to, it requires money. Like, money is the tool by which things are built and things are made. Um, and to build something of value requires a lot of money and effort and time. Um, and as long as you have like a good exchange of value with a customer, I think that's what matters. I get annoyed when I see businesses that are just like they're not providing value and they're charging for things. Like, that's annoying. That exists. But when you are providing a huge amount of value, like, you essentially have to charge something in order to continue um, providing that value. And it ultimately ends up, like you said, people are more likely to commit to things. Um,
Yeah, I think
that's
also
that
we
said,
more people. Yeah, go ahead.
so the other side to that. Okay, there's two things to kind of say what you're going at. And one is like, okay, Native Shark is completely different from Nihongo Shark because Native Shark is like a full on business that has to operate and build value and these kinds of things. And then the other side to that is, okay, but there still is this idea of people who, you know, could study or would study, actually would legitimately so, if they had the means to do so. And so, how do we bridge the gap between these two things? Like, this is a question that a lot of companies are asking in today's world versus like, 30 years ago, when I feel like businesses then, at least my impression is like that generation of businesses wasn't very socially conscious, I feel like. Whereas nowadays businesses are a lot, not all of them, but business are attempting to be more socially conscious and trying to balance that with, the actual
Or
business.
appear to be, at
Yeah, yeah.
least.
I mean, that, and to a certain extent,
Within
that's
their
what
interest
matters,
to
though.
appear to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you, whether they are or not doesn't really matter. If they appear to be and they are doing something that is being socially conscious, like if it's actually having positive effects, it doesn't really matter if they are or aren't at the end of the day. In the case of like us, it's like something that we want to balance is being socially conscious and obviously running a successful, profitable business that can provide value for many, many years to come. And on that note, it's like I do want to come up with a system that does allow those who, like this person who just commented in chat, basically that I want
Like
to do something
fonts.
like that. Yes, is which they said, would you consider something like allowing some of us grown-ups out here to drop a few bucks here and there into a scholarship fund for those sad pandas in the Santa channel? I know I can't justify buying a stranger a full sub, but I'd toss 10 into the pot here and there. Um, yeah, like this idea of a scholarship fund, um, and or even like for those who do want it, just like full gift a sub to a stranger, I think would be a really cool thing to build out, and like I'd like to do that for sure. Now figuring out the
Yeah.
logistics around that,
Logistics, yeah.
yeah, again, because
Especially to prevent fraud.
yeah, I always think about I'm always thinking about logistics, so I guess that's why I'm the part of the business that I am, right? But yeah,
But yeah, that'll be
I want
sweet.
to do it. And if people have ideas on how to do something like that or what might be cool or whatnot, like definitely reach out and you can send us an email or you can chat in our community. Would love to see what others think, but I think it'd be really cool to have a scholarship program.
Yeah. Scholarship fund sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Maybe we just have to force them to upload a video or something if they were asking for a scholarship, because anyone could write a message saying that they're in middle
You want it
school
to
or
go for people who it
something.
actually matters.
Yeah.
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 I don't think, yeah, like some people feel that way and then like, oh, so we can't actually do it. But like, I don't think so. I think we can do this. I think there's a way to make it
Yeah.
legitimate, and maybe some people will get it and they don't actually need it, but that happens, like that's okay. But
Yeah. The last thing I had to come to terms with is that when we do charge for a product, more people learn.
yeah.
If it's free, then we can't build out the content to the level of depth that it should be built out. We can't expand the
Mm-hmm.
number of paths that we're teaching. We can't hire the people to improve the product. That we can't pay for the marketing and advertising that introduces the product to other people that want to learn the language but haven't heard about it. So in it, like, yeah, you give one person free access, but quite possibly at the cost of 3 or 4 people someday learning through the platform.
Yeah.
So that's another sort of mindset shift that I had to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, we're getting there. Figuring it out.
And someday we'll have the scholarship fund that you also get to come to Japan and visit our office and take private lessons at our little cafe school on the first floor of the building.
Yeah, for sure.
The dream lives on.
The dream lives on. Yeah. Even in the world the way that it is. But yeah, I don't know. I like, again, contrasting NativShark versus NeongoShark. Like I like NativShark a lot and where we're going with it and what we can do with it, the impact we can have. Getting, you're talking about like charging and pricing. Even with NativShark, our initial pricing was difficult. Like it didn't. Again, okay. When it comes to running a business, like you are sometimes just hit with hard facts, like you think something might be a certain way, or you want things to be a certain way, and then you're just smacked with reality. And that's kind of the way it was with um I hope the cafe will be 90% Ocha and 10% teaching. Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah, it'll be 45% Ocha, 45% beer, and 10%
There
teaching.
you go. Yeah, yeah. But
Depends
okay.
what time you go to school.
But like being in business, or especially like software startup, that kind of thing that we are, sometimes you are just smacked with like hard facts and hard reality. And again, going back to the beginning of this conversation where we're talking about doing things on a whim, or not just just going because you didn't take the time to think about your decision. Our original pricing was like a dinosaur that we came up with like years ago, and they just never thought about. And then we were like, okay, well, if we make it, and we had a light plan, and we thought, okay, if we make it cheaper, then maybe more people will be able to learn. Like that was the motivation. Um, but you get smacked with reality, and that like I don't know if unit economics is the right word, but like the unit price is too low to sustain the continued production of the product. Like that, some products obviously can be sold for like $7 a month because the volume and all these things work out. But when the value of the product, the NativShark, is actually so much higher than that amount, it actually is detrimental to the product and stuff. Like it actually sold worse. Not only did it was it like um we couldn't recuperate costs from the light subscription, but the light subscription actually sold worse, and the quality of the product was worse from a development perspective, and from a user perspective, and even from like a market perspective, marketing. It was literally worse
Well,
than when
yeah.
we simplified it and we started
If,
charging more.
if I told you I'll sell you this brand new iPhone for $20, what are you gonna
Yeah,
do? You're gonna think, what's wrong with it?
right. So these things are like, it's crazy. It's interesting too. Like these are the interesting, kind of exciting things to like learn about, business and like a software as a service, like all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, like how does that work? Like how do you come up with a pricing that fits for the market, fits for the product, fits for the consumer? And I'm not gonna say what we have now is perfect, but it seems to be um, working way better, and very like working both for the students and working for the business significantly better than what we started with. Um, so I'm glad we were able to come up with something and kind of like pivot early like we did. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's,
I do indeed.
yeah, it's important stuff to think about. And you know, it's a side of business that maybe the everyday consumer isn't thinking about. So that's why it's kind of fun to talk about it. Here on the podcast is, I don't know, like, do you guys think about these things when you're out there purchasing products, interacting with the world? Um, but
If they own a
if
business,
they
I
own a
bet they
business, I'm
do.
sure they do. But if you don't, like, it can help to kind of view the perspective of what it takes to make something. But on that note, you want to end it here?
That's good. Coming up on 2 hours
Yeah,
almost.
hour
So
45 is where we're at right now. So yeah, interesting episode today. We talked a lot about reflecting and growth, and yeah, I just want to say, like, again, like all in all, proud of what we did with NativShark. Even more proud of what we've done with NativShark in the past year. Um, Excited to see the personal growth that both you and I have had in the various different areas. We've both had it. It's been both in like totally different ways and areas. But it's been awesome, and I'm really looking forward to the next year.
same.
All right, take care, everybody. Thanks for
All
joining
right.
us for today's session, and yeah, see you guys next
Thank
week.
you.
All right, take care.